What makes you say that?
That's where they come from. Starlings, too. They've been ringed in Leningrad and they turn up here in October. Too cold for them over there in the winter.
Is that so? I said. He had become quite animated now, took half a cigarette from behind his ear and stuck it in his mouth.
Cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey over there in the winter. A lot of Germans died at Leningrad during the war. Not shot or anything, just froze to death.
By now I was quite fascinated. I said, "Who told you all that?"
"About the birds,"
he said. And suddenly he changed completely, his face suffused by a kind of sly cunning.
"Why, Werner told me. He knew all about birds."
"And who was Werner?"
"Werner?"
He blinked several times, the vacant look appearing on his face again, though whether genuine or simulated it was impossible to tell.
"He was a good lad, Werner. A good lad. They shouldn't have done that to him."
He leaned over his spade and started to dig again, dismissing me completely. I stayed there for a moment longer, but it was obvious that he had nothing more to say. So, reluctantly, because it had certainly sounded as if it might be a good story, I turned and worked my way through the tombstones to the main entrance. I paused inside the porch. There was a notice board on the wall in some sort of dark wood, the lettering in faded gold paint, Church of St. Mary and All the Saints, Studley Constable, across the top, and underneath, the times for Mass and Confession. At the bottom it said, Father Philip Vereker, S.J. The door was oak and very old, held together by iron bands studded with bolts. The handle was a bronze lion's head with a large ring in its mouth, and the ring had to be turned to one side before the door opened, which it did finally, with a slight, eerie creaking. I'd expected darkness and gloom inside, but instead found what was in effect a medieval cathedral in miniature, flooded with light and astonishingly spacious. The nave arcades were superb, great Norman pillars soaring up to an incredible wooden roof, richly carved with an assortment of figures, human and animal, which were really in quite remarkable condition. A row of round clerestory windows on either side at roof level were responsible for a great deal of the light which had so surprised me. There was a beautiful stone font, and on the wall beside it, a painted board listed all the priests who had served over the years, starting with a Rafe de Courcy in 1132, and ending with Vereker again, who had taken over in 1943. Beyond was a small dark chapel, candles flickering in front of an image of the Virgin Mary that seemed to float there in the half-light. I walked past it and down the centre aisle between the pews. It was very quiet, only the ruby light of the sanctuary lamp, a 15th-century Christ high on his cross down by the altar, rain drumming against the high windows. There was a scrape of a foot on stone behind me, and a dry, firm voice said, "Can I help you?" I turned and found a priest, standing in the entrance of the Lady Chapel, a tall, gaunt man in a faded black cassock. He had iron-grey hair cropped close to the skull, and the eyes were set deep in their sockets, as if he had been recently ill, an impression heightened by the tightness of the skin across the cheekbones. It was a strange face, soldier or scholar. This man could have been either, but that didn't surprise me, remembering from the notice board that he was a Jesuit. But it was also a face that lived with pain as a constant companion, if I was any judge, and as he came forward, I saw that he leaned heavily on a blackthorn stick and dragged his left foot. "Father Vereker?" "That's right." "I was talking to the old man out there, the sexton."
"Ah, yes, Laker Armsby."
"If that's his name. He thought you might be able to help me." I held out my hand. "My name's Higgins, by the way. Jack Higgins. I'm a writer." He hesitated slightly before shaking hands, but only because he had to switch the blackthorn.